guys, Jack here from Bridge. Today we're talking about espresso ratios. We're going to try and define an espresso, a ristretto and a lungo. We're going to talk about why ratio has an effect on the flavour of your coffee and then how you can use it to dial in your particular coffee according to your taste preferences. So espresso ratio refers to the amount of liquid that you're getting in the cup compared to the amount of dry coffee that you started with. They're usually given in grams and then written as the dose of coffee to the output of espresso. So a really standard espresso recipe will use 18 grams of coffee and will give you 36 grams of espresso, and that's a 1:2 ratio. Ratio is one of those fundamental aspects of brewing coffee, along with temperature, pressure, grind size, and time. And it kind of has two different effects on your coffee. So the more water you use, or the higher your ratio, the more flavor you'll be able to extract from your coffee, but the more dilute your final beverage is going to be. And you can see that really clearly when you just watch an espresso being brewed. So as the liquid first comes out of the portafilter, you'll see it's really rich and thick, but the overall extraction is still pretty low. As the brew continues and the ratio gets longer, the liquid becomes more and more dilute, but the extraction has kept rising. So as ratio increases, the more dilute your coffee will be, but the more total amount of flavor you'll have extracted from that coffee. So a ristretto, lungo, espresso, they're all quite hard to define, but typically an espresso will be 1:2 or 1:2.5. A ristretto could be 1:1, or a lungo could be 1:3. So a ristretto will be a really small, dense and strong coffee, and it will have had to work really hard to extract coffee flavor, and it might be a little bit under extracted. An espresso will be a little bit weaker, but it will be much more balanced and able to extract much more flavor. And then further, a lungo will be a little bit more dilute once again, but it's got much more chance of extracting all of the flavor out of the coffee. So a ristretto can quite easily be under extracted, whilst a lungo can quite easily be over extracted. It's totally understandable if that's a little bit confusing, especially if you're used to the idea that a ristretto is strong and a lungo is weak. But if you can try and think away from the use of the word strong and think more in terms of dilution and extraction, that's really helpful. So next we'll talk about how you can use ratio to start affecting and dialing in the flavor of your coffee. So now we know that the ratio of your espresso directly links to how much flavor you're able to extract from the coffee. So you might now be thinking that you should probably use longer ratios to get as much flavor out of the coffee as possible. Well, that might not necessarily be true. Different coffees might taste better at different levels of extraction. So some might taste better being slightly under extracted and would be better suited for a ristretto, whilst others might really suit high levels of extraction, so you might want to use lungos for those. If you're a fan of light roasted coffee, you might have found that they're quite easy to under extract and get acidic, sour flavors. So when you're brewing a light roast as an espresso, it will really benefit from a longer ratio. So you could start from 1:3 and you can take that all the way up to a turbo shot, which is where you use a ratio like 1:5 and a coarse grind size, and you let it extract in about 10 to 15 seconds. Definitely something worth trying if you haven't already. And if that's something you'd like to see a video on, hit subscribe to the channel. And whilst you're there, leave a like on the video as well, really helps us out. So on the other end of the scale, you've got dark roast coffees, and these have a lot of bitter compounds that you might not want to extract into your final cup. Dark roasts have had a lot more time inside the roaster to develop, so they're a lot easier to extract when it comes to brewing the espresso. So to try and avoid the bitter flavors, you might want to lower the extraction, and you can do that by using a shorter ratio, like a 1:1. And that's why you'll commonly see traditional Italian style dark roast coffee being brewed at shorter ratios. That can avoid the over extracted bitter flavors and can lead to a really small, concentrated but balanced cup of espresso. So as a quick recap on what kind of ratio you might want to go for according to the coffee that you're using, a good place to start for a dark roast might be anywhere between a 1:1 and a 1:2. A medium roast, that will work really nicely as a classic espresso, 1:2, 1:2.5. And then for a light roast, you want to push the extraction a little bit higher. So start at a 1:3 and see how you go. If you're someone that really enjoys having a small concentrated coffee, you might want to go for a more darker roast style that will come out really nice and balanced as a short 1:1 ristretto. Whereas if you're looking for more fruity, floral and acidic characteristics from your coffee and you don't mind sacrificing a little bit of texture, then definitely go for a light roast and try a longer 1:3 ratio. So once you know that you can affect the flavor of your coffee by using ratio, you can start to use it as part of your dial-in process to really fine-tune the flavor. Sometimes you won't be able to fine-tune your coffee by dialing the grind size, so it's really useful to know that you can do that with the ratio as well. If you're using a grinder that doesn't quite let you grind fine enough, or you're using pre-ground coffee and you have to deal with whatever grind size the roaster gave you, you can try using ratio to dial in the recipe. If the coffee comes out too quickly and it's under-extracted and tasting sour, you can up the dose of coffee to slow down the extraction and increase contact time. On the other hand, if it's coming out too slowly and it ends up tasting bitter and over-extracted, but you can't dial in the grind size, you can decrease the amount of coffee that you're using to speed up the extraction. So for example, if I've got some pre-ground coffee and I'm shooting for an 18 gram to 36 gram ratio, but it ends up coming out too quickly and it's under-extracted, what I can do is increase the dose to 18.5 grams. That should slow down the shot and increase the extraction at the same time. Once you've been brewing espresso for a while and you've got some decent experience and you're starting to get used to what the espresso should look like when it comes out of the machine, you can also start troubleshooting your espresso on the fly using ratio. So if you see your espresso coming out of the machine too quickly, it probably means that you haven't ground fine enough. But what you can do during that shot is, instead of finishing at your target weight, you can let the ratio go a little bit longer. That will mean that the drink is a little bit more dilute than you were hoping for, but it will help to combat the fact that you ground too fine and would otherwise be under-extracted. The same is true the other way around as well. So if you were aiming for a 1:2 ratio in 28 seconds, let's say, but the espresso is coming out far too slowly, you might want to stop the shot before your target weight and go for a shorter ratio just so you don't over-extract the coffee. So I hope that sheds some light on espresso ratios, what they are and how they affect the flavor of your coffee. If you want to learn a little bit more about espresso, then feel free to check out our Dialing in Your Grinder for Espresso video that covers everything you need to know about grind size. If you like the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.